the Sci-Fi Show.
So, hey, ladies and gentlemen, we're here. We didn't do a mix today because obviously I had that barbecue. And today we're going to be having a discussion about philosophy games. So, you might have remembered when we did those thought experiments and things like that. What would Joe do last year? And we answered these quizzes and discussed them with the audience. Well, we're going to be doing a similar sort of thing today with philosophy games. And we have, said to anybody can join us on stream. We've sent the link out, so if anybody does want to join us, actually in the meet today we're leaving it open for anyone to join us, but if not, it really doesn't matter. Dave and I are happy to go through things and see where we go. But yes, if you check out the chat on YouTube, we've posted the link right there. Anyway, it's time for us to actually start the show. Hello and welcome to the Sci-Fi Show. I'm Joe.
And I'm not Peter Singer.
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to check that out, but that meme that I saw, yeah, if that was the case, I haven't verified it, but that didn't look good. Yeah. Maybe old age is taking him at last.
No, he gets misrepresented a lot.
Fair. That's fair. Doesn't everybody? So, hello, ladies and gentlemen. So today we are doing some philosophy games. So there's a site that we're all using tonight, which is philosophersmag.com/games, which I am going to paste in the chat right now, so you can all join in with us if you like. And also what I shall do is I'll paste the link to join us again that I pasted earlier, if anybody wants to actually join us in the meet, because we're opening it up for this particular one. So there we go.
And come on and tell us how dumb we are and how much nonsense we talk.
Well, we already know, but we're happy to have you do that.
Yeah, exactly. We need it drummed into us sometimes.
So yeah, Dave, did you have an idea over which ones that you wanted to start with? Because there's some good ones in there that, I mean, I haven't gone through any of them, but the ideas of them there, some of them are like, well, people often get things like valid and invalid wrong, but there are times when you're looking at an argument and I reckon these are going to be a bit more tricky, because obviously it's quite obvious something like the Kalam is valid even if you think it's unsound, though many people say it's invalid and they're wrong. But when you're looking at some arguments, they seem like they might be valid or invalid, and they require a little bit of extra thought. So I thought that one might be an interesting but tricky one to do.
One that we need Philip here for.
Oh, definitely. Morality play. I think we've already done that one. The how parsimonious is your moral framework.
I was going to say, in the description I wrote up for it as well, I mentioned these are coming from the same place that we did those ones last year.
Yeah. So there's
there
a couple
seems to be some on. Yeah. There seems to be some on there that we haven't done, and some that we have done. So.
Yeah, that's fair. So, yeah. Oh, yeah, we did the staying alive one as well, didn't we? The personal identity. I remember doing that. Hey, Claire, how you doing? Do you feel like joining us? We're doing in case you didn't know, we're doing some philosophy games today, and we've basically sent out the invite so people can join us on here. We've also given the link to the games that we're going to be playing if people want to play along and give their answers in the chat. Now, Dave, did we want to share a screen, or did we just want to discuss it as we go through?
I don't know. It might be good if you share the screen, I guess, because then people who can't go to the site can at least see the questions and maybe post their answers in the chat.
Okay, well, if, ladies and gentlemen, you'll give me just a couple of seconds to switch things up, and I will share my screen. Be right back. Let's just switch it like that. There you go. I know it's not as pretty as our normal one, but it at least works. I've got no clue why it insists on doing this sort of thing occasionally.
Yeah, it's looking fine at this end.
Yeah, it'll work. It'll work. Where would you like to start tonight, Dave?
Well, seeing as many people tune in for the whole atheism link to the channel, should we start with Battleground God?
Sounds good to me. So if this is the first time you've seen us try these sort of online quizzes things, what we do is we tend to have our idea and then discuss what we think, and then maybe our idea changes towards the end. I don't think I've brought a pen with me today, though, so I'm not going to be able to write down. We'll just have to... Oh, no, there it is. Marvel notepad. Yep, I'm a big kid. Shut up.
The only complaint I have is that it's not DC.
Well, it's because I wanted it to be good.
But I need to sample the old AOL thing where she goes, goodbye.
Yeah. Kimo guesses Saw. Sorry?
No, it wasn't Saw, the title.
Your voice didn't come through there.
Yeah, no, it's an older film than that, and you can kind of see the image on the right has a sort of hint at what film it's from. It's not, do you want to play a game, or what is it? I think it's in Saw, do you want to play a game?
I want to play a game. I want to play a game.
That's it. Yeah, I didn't like the Saw film, so I don't really remember.
I really enjoyed it.
This one's from the 80s and has Matthew Broderick in it, about a hacker.
I can't think of an 80s game with... Not Lawnmower Man.
If I say global thermonuclear war, does that help?
No.
Okay, I'll just give it up. It's War Games.
Okay, no, I've not seen it.
Shall we play a game?
Yeah.
And it lists chess, checkers, and a few others, and at the end it's global thermonuclear war.
Yeah. I do apologise for not knowing.
You Philistine.
Oh, Claire View guessed it. I don't know if she guessed it before or after you said it. They have a slight delay from us saying it. Let's say Claire wins anyway.
That's what I'm thinking. Yeah, I think Claire got it. So she gets the bonus points for this evening.
Yeah. So, anyway, Battleground God. Let's have a look. Zoom in so it's easier for everyone to see. Right, we don't have the ads there. Battleground God. Can your beliefs about religion make it across our intellectual battleground? In this activity, you'll be asked a series of questions about God and religion. In each case, apart from question 1, where don't know is a possible answer, you need to answer either true or false. The aim of the activity is not to judge whether your answers are correct, rather our battleground is that of rational consistency. That means to get across without taking any hits, you are required to answer in a way that is rationally consistent. In other words, you have to avoid choosing answers answers that contradict each other. Also, if you answer in a way that is rationally consistent, but which has strange or unpalatable implications, you'll be forced to bite a bullet, accept something many find unpalatable and would view as being a major problem. More about hits and bullets. Of course, you may go along with thinkers such as Kierkegaard and believe that religious belief does not need to be rationally consistent, but that takes us beyond the scope of this activity, which is about the extent of which your beliefs are rationally consistent, not whether this is a good or a bad thing. Awesome. So, ladies and gentlemen, hopefully you've seen the link in the chat. So if you want to join us, it's Philosophers Mag, and we're playing Battleground God. It's the one at the top. I will just drop this back into the chat one more time, just in case anyone wants to give it a go. And also, one more time, I shall drop in the link to join us on stream if you did want to join and answer doing your own quiz at the same time. Have you got yours up and ready to go, Dave?
I do. And also, before we start, always remember,
don't be a cunt.
don't be a cunt, innit?
There's some really weird delay coming from you today. You spoke and then you stood up and then your voice started coming through. Really weird.
Okay, that's weird. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Is it raining in Wales?
Is it never raining in Wales?
So, let's start. Question 1. God exists. I mean...
Yeah, I'm going to answer on my own on this screen, and we'll compare answers at the end.
Yeah.
I've already answered this one, though.
Yeah, so I'm going to say false. I'm going to assume that they're talking about, like, the Christian God there. I believe no gods exist. So I'd probably answer false on if it was a global set anyway. But I wouldn't necessarily make a knowledge claim on that one. So there you go. There's the first one answered. God is a logical possibility. Okay, so this is a tough one because I would say that God in general is a logical possibility, but a specific God claim might change that. So with them not qualifying what they mean by God, I don't necessarily know how to answer that. I mean,
I would imagine that because it's TPM, that they're talking about the god of classical theism or perhaps the god of philosophers. But like you said, without them specifying, you don't really know. It's just this general term that could mean one of a million possibilities.
Yeah. Well, I'll go with it's a logical possibility anyway. There's nothing logically inconsistent with it. That's
what I went for. Yeah.
If God does not exist, then there's no basis for morality. Well, you know where I stand on that. One of the few things even though I do have my doubts, I'm more certain on in philosophy than anything else. An entity that any entity that it is right to call God must be free to do anything.
In other words, God must have free will, and it must be able to commit evil, even if it chooses not.
Yes, but if we're thinking more about, say, like the Norse gods or something like that, they do have certain limitations, and I'd still regard them as gods. They're just not that same.
That's a god rather than God.
Yeah. Okay. Any entity that it is right to call God must want there to be as little suffering in the world as possible. I mean,
Sorry, just quickly. From this, I would imagine that what they're speaking about is the god of classical theism, which is the triomni god.
Yeah. And which is why, it's sort of alluding to the problem of evil with this question. And I would think that would be the case. I mean, especially if we've got these, this perfect deity that's loving, etc., or the omnibenevolence, or even just perfectly loving, however you want to phrase it. I would say that Joe is a hamster screaming in pain. Oh, Joe's hamster is screaming in pain. I just thought you were calling me a hamster screaming in pain. Nice to see you, Dave.
Is he referring to you as Freddie Starr?
I don't know.
You know what Freddie Starr did with his hamster, don't you? Or the claims of what Freddie Starr did with his hamster.
Up the bum, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's the one. What was the character from The Boys?
But the Ant-Man character.
Ant-Man, yeah. But I can't remember what he was called in The Boys.
No, I know.
But I think he's insinuating the same kind of thing, that your hamster is doing what he did.
So yeah, I would assume from this Omni-God that it should probably want there to be as little suffering in the world as possible. Any entity that it is right to call God must have the power to do anything. So again, if we're talking about the Omni-God, then yes. Again, I will qualify that if we're talking about the Norse gods, they can't necessarily do anything. But the way it is phrasing it here, as you have said, Dave, it seems like we are talking about the Omni-God. So, Icarus, a philosophy game, yes. How you doing, dude? So I don't know if you caught the earlier bit, but we've sent out an invite, so you can join us on this. We're playing Battleground God first of all, so I'll send you the link again in the chat. And if you want to join us live on the stream, anyone can join us using this link as well, just to have a chat with us. You can dip in and out, whenever you want. Dave will be here till we've done a few games. It's just a bit of a fun stream, bit of a change of pace from the usual stuff, which is still fun for us, but probably not for anyone else. But yes, so we're playing Battleground God at the moment. If you answer the questions quickly, you can catch us up.
One caveat I have to this question, and one that I've kind of inferred, and they might not be talking about this, but I've substituted power to do anything with power to do anything logically possible. Yeah,
I would agree with you there. I mean, you sort of have to, don't you? Because, well, we'll see. It might mark us down for that, because it might ask us a question that shows that we're being inconsistent if we think it should be able to do anything. But no, we didn't talk about the Stanley Parable. Great game, though. I haven't played the new version of it, but I played the old one. But no, we're just playing philosophy games, not actually talking about philosophy within actual games. Anything logically possible. And I reckon it's going to come up with a question that says we're being inconsistent there, because it's going to say something later. While there might be an argument over the details, evolution by natural selection is the correct explanation for the origin of the species. Yeah. Not necessarily the origin of life. It's talking about how we got here. Yeah, I was just wondering if it was actually asking that for a second.
It kind of has that feeling, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It does warn you after answering this that the questions are about to start getting cuntish.
No injury so far, but watch out, danger ahead. Is that why he's going danger, Will Robinson? He's already ahead of us.
No, it's terrible. This is why it takes us 3 hours to review a 30-second video.
Well, because I'm slow.
Both of us are, yeah.
It is justified to base one's belief system about the external world, i.e. the world outside one's head, on a firm inner conviction, even in absence of any independent evidence for the truth of this conviction.
Yeah, see, this one's kind of a difficult one for me, because what happens if you have evidence to the opposite?
Yeah.
Like, there might be certain seemings that might be fine for basing your kind of belief on and justifying your belief on. Like, I look out and I see a tree.
But then that's an external... Surely that is still some form of external...
Yeah, that's still externalism. But if I think, well, I have free will, that's a sort of internal view based on my seeming of how things are and how the external world seems to be. Like, I have free will in the external world. But there's no firm evidence to show that we don't. It's just all kind of conjecture about how the universe works. Yeah. But in the sense of something like, I believe that the universe and the stars align to tell me how my day is going to go tomorrow. I feel like if there's evidence against that seeming, then you're not justified to base it. But there are some that you can base it on.
So I'm going to go with the fact that this is talking about everything in the external world, and I'm going to say false, because I don't think you can for a big picture. I think...
No, only certain parts of the picture.
Yeah. Any entity that it is right to call God must know everything there is to know. Well, if we're talking about the Omni-God, yes. If we're not talking about the Omni-God, then no.
Yeah, that's it.
I'd like to redo this one at some point, where I'm doing it as if I'm talking about the Norse gods rather than the Omni-God.
Yeah, that could be pretty fun, yeah.
Torturing innocent people is morally wrong. Yes, you might be able to give some caveat to it, but I would say 99.9% of the time that yes. In fact, I'd say it's always morally wrong, but you might enter a problem of dirty hands. If, despite years of trying, no strong evidence or argument has been presented to show that there is a Loch Ness monster, it is rational to believe that such a monster does not exist. Yeah.
Yeah, so basically you've just agreed with those people who argue that they haven't been presented with evidence for God, so therefore God does not exist.
Yeah, but that's different though, isn't it?
It sort of is kind of the same thing. But, I mean, it is different as well because there is sort of evidence that is presented. It's just not good enough evidence.
Well, it's also claimed to be a physical creature in a
physical creature,
lock.
Yeah.
And, there have been people who have been in that lock and not seen it. It's not talking about some other metaphysical being. Now, it may give me a bullet by saying, if it comes up later and talks about a god and says, well, why are you accepting it there and not there? But I feel justified in the difference between the two. There's enough difference between the two situations.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, they've even scanned, as far as I know, they've scanned the actual lock to get like the map, the depth map. And found nothing out of the ordinary. So, yeah.
People who die of horrible, painful diseases need to die in such a way for some higher purpose. No. No. Oh, Kimmo, you lead towards Pyrrhonianism. How'd you cross the street safely? Icarus, define morally wrong, define innocent, define torturing. You're torturing me right now, and I'm an innocent. I'm not an innocent. If God exists, she can make it so that everything now considered sinful becomes morally acceptable, and everything that is now considered morally good becomes sinful. I mean, technically, yes, because if God
Divine command.
Yeah, is the arbiter of morality, as you say, divine command theory, Dave. Yes, that could be something that God does. I mean, you can even see in the Bible certain bits of morality sort of shift around.
Once Jesus came in, the commandment was cancelled, and we now go by this commandment. Yeah.
You're
That's
under
the answer
fire.
I gave, and I got that too. Yeah.
You claimed earlier that the entity that is right to call God must want there to be as little suffering in any world possible, but you also say God can make it so that... Yeah, but they can. You said that God must want to reduce suffering, which would make that she wants, i.e. the reduction of suffering, sinful.
Perfectly good. So, perfectly good, perfectly benevolent, so therefore they should want what's good, but... if God is the arbiter of everything that's moral, to me, this doesn't show a conflict with my beliefs, but more a confliction between what many Christians might argue about God.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons why I believe God doesn't exist, because these claims are in tension with each other.
Yeah. But that's just it. It's not my beliefs are in a contradiction. It's their beliefs are in contradiction. Where's my option for that?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Like, I suppose I'll put my beliefs are in contradiction then, but they're not my beliefs. It's their beliefs. So, you know, I'm using someone else's template of God and answering how they ought to
exactly,
answer.
Yeah.
Based
That's
on
why
those
I
things.
took the bullet as well. Yeah.
Oh, you took the bullet instead of the direct hit?
Oh, no. My beliefs are in contradiction. I'll take a direct hit. Sorry. Fair. Yeah. Took the bullet rather than bite the bullet.
It's foolish to believe in a God without certain irrevocable proof that God exists. I wouldn't say necessarily so. I think that people can be justified in it.
It depends on their foundation for epistemology.
Yeah. I mean, I believe gods don't exist, but I think some theists can be quite rational in their beliefs. As long as there are no compelling arguments or evidence that show God does not exist, atheism is a matter for faith, not rationality. Not necessarily, so I'll go false there as well. Well, actually, it says no compelling arguments or evidence. So that would make it a matter of faith. So, yeah.
That's how I responded.
Yeah. So I didn't read it in the first bit. I mean, I read it out loud. You heard me read it. But I was just like, I just read
reading rather than processing.
Yeah. So, yeah, technically, if there were no compelling arguments or evidence that would show God does not exist, then atheism would be a matter of faith, not rationality. However, there are compelling arguments that I think show at least some gods definitely don't exist, and enough justification to believe no gods exist. So, if it wasn't
for the kind of God that they seem to be talking about.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's why I instantly went there. I was like, no, don't you say that about atheism. What? So they're going along the lines of this. Earlier you responded that it is rational to believe... Yeah, okay. But the contradiction is that the first occasion, Loch Ness Monster, you agreed that the absence of evidence or argument is enough to justify the belief in non-existence of Loch Ness, but you don't on this occasion with God. Yes, but
I
there's a
feel
big
like,
difference. There's a false
yeah, I feel,
equivalence.
yeah, exactly. I feel like there is compelling evidence. The way they worded it made it sound like if there is good evidence to show that the Loch Ness Monster doesn't exist, you know, um, it's not the same. Like you mentioned, it's not the same. There are physical reasons to believe and physical ways to check, and therefore believing it's false based on there being no evidence of its existence seems justifiable to say it doesn't exist. But in the case of God, it's a slightly different matter.
Yeah.
Perhaps I've just read the questions wrong.
No, I don't. I don't think you have. I think one of the problems you do have with quizzes like this is obviously they are pre-programmed. There isn't the nuance there, and they might not have thought about it in the way we're thinking about it. And I reckon most people will come to these questions maybe on either the theism or the atheism side and have a very particular view of what they're saying. And we're actually trying to go, well, this is what the theists believe about God. And so we're answering it using their description of God. And, then we're talking about like the Loch Ness Monster. They're comparing something that is supposed to be a physical entity with something that is they should have gone with something else like metaphysical, like the Tooth Fairy.
Yeah, or angels or something like that. Like you said, there's a sort of false equivalence going on here.
Yeah. It looks like in general, Icarus doesn't agree with the hit either. Define Joe. I wouldn't do that, Icarus.
He's got a gun. And he's going down to shoot his old lady.
Right. The serial killer, Pete Sutcliffe, had a firm inner conviction that God wanted him to kill prostitutes. He was therefore justified in believing that he was carrying out God's will in his victims. No. No. Especially if you believe that God's a loving person, etc. But no. No. This is going to give us a hit because we said anything.
Yeah, it is. Because we mistakenly applied the principle of charity to what they were saying, in that they were saying that anything logically possible, but they're referring to the omnipotence paradox in that can God create a rock too heavy for him to lift? Yeah.
And again, we can't qualify that. I mean, technically, we could say true in this instance and go, yeah, but they could just refine the number 2 to be 72, and that's how it looks to them. But again, that's not answering it in the spirit of how we want to answer the questions. So
yeah, and it's not being asked in the spirit of how we want to answer the question either.
You've taken a direct hit. Yeah. It is justified to believe that in God if one has a firm inner conviction that God exists, even if there's no independent evidence that God exists. You need at least some form of argument or some reason. Male, Great Britain. Well, I'm still in that category.
You cunt. I'm in the one next.
Not for much longer, Dave. Yeah.
We didn't do too bad considering.
Yeah, I mean, we answered the questions expecting them to be slightly different. If we'd have known that they meant anything rather than anything logically possible, we'd have answered that one differently. I don't agree with the equivalence they made with the Loch Ness and God. What was the other hit?
Omnipotence, creating a square circle, the omnipotence paradox.
Yeah, well, we answered
and the moral question.
The moral question. Yeah, again, I don't think that's necessarily a contradiction. God could do that if they wanted to. It's not saying that they would want to.
Well, if you think of it in terms of God must want everything that's good, but if God is this omnipotent, omnibenevolent, omniscient being, he would know what is good and would command what is good anyway. So he must want what was good. So if he commands something and it seems to not be good to us, then it should be logically read that if he commands it, it must be good.
Yeah.
Not that he's defining why it's good. It's not him that makes it good. It's he chooses it because it's good. So even if it seems like torturing a baby is wrong to us, if he commands it, then there must be some good reason behind it.
Yeah.
It doesn't hold water for me, you know what I mean? But according to the arguments that I read, this seems to be the case.
Yeah. I disagree with that whole.
I scored the same as you anyway by the end of it. In fact, I answered it pretty much exactly the same as you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed. Oh look, it's gone back to this tab.
Yeah, it always was. Once you clicked on it, it went straight to philosophy experiments.
Yeah, it's the same sort of thing, though, isn't it? As the philosophy.
It is,
games.
but there's loads more in there than when we did it last year. I think there was like 6 or 8 there last year.
Awesome, right? So Claire also got 2 hits and 1 bullet. Professor Icarus got 1 hit. His score was 2, and he doesn't agree with it. Yeah, I mean, look, I think that we can explain, all of us, why we got the answers that we did. The understanding how they meant the things, you know, when someone says anything, it's like, well, what do you mean by anything? Because in general, when we say anything, we mean anything logically possible. So...
Well, I don't see why we should even think that saying anything is even a reasonable sentence to say, because it doesn't seem reasonable to say that anybody could do anything logically possible. Logically impossible.
I know what you meant, yeah. But good to qualify.
As a serial killer, should we kill the backpacker?
There's that.
I think it was up there. Should we kill the fat man?
Yeah.
But there's also one, should you kill the backpacker?
Oh, yeah, there you go.
And, you know, seeing as I'm the British version of Ivan Milat, the backpack killer, you know.
Icarus wants to do valid or invalid. Rosie, yes, your score comes at the end. So Icarus, will do valid or invalid next.
Yeah,
we'll kill the backpacker first, and then we'll do valid or invalid.
Yeah, I've got him stuck in my shed, so I'll be back in a minute.
This activity focuses on some of the complications raised by the famous trolley problem thought experiment. In particular, it relies on Judith Travis Thomason's essay, The Trolley Problem, published in Yale Law in 1985. It seems you have not yet completed Should You Kill the Fat Man activity on the website, or at least not recently. If that's right, you may want to consider this a go before undertaking this activity, since it deals with some of the more straightforward issues raised in the trolley problem. However, the current activity is entirely self-contained, so if you wish to proceed, just click the button below. You can track your performance by referring to the graph on the right. Every time the activity detects a contradiction or tension in your responses, it will make an addition to your tension quotient, which currently stands at 0. It will also display the average tension quotient for each stage in the activity, so you can see how you're doing compared to the other people. See if you can get to the end of the activity with a score that is lower than average. Okay, brave decision. Here's your first question. There are no tricks here, just pick the answer you're most inclined towards. Scenario 1, the trolley problem. Pacey Bones is a driver of a trolley. His trolley rounds a bend and there comes into view a track 5-track workmen who have been repairing the track. The track goes through a bit of a valley at that point, and the sides are steep, so he must stop the trolley if he is to avoid running the 5 men down. He steps on the brakes, but alas, they don't work. Happily, he sees a spur of the track leading off to the right. He can turn the trolley onto it and thus save the 5 men on the straight track ahead. Unfortunately, there is a single workman on that spur of the track. The workman can no more get off the track in time than can the 5 men, so Pacey will kill him if he turns the trolley onto the spur. Assuming that the one workman on the spur does not consent giving up his life to save the other 5 people, is it nevertheless morally permissible for Pacey to turn the trolley? Oh, hang on, I'm not clicking in the right place. There we go. Yeah, I mean, I'd lean towards yes. If you, I'd probably lean to use, utilitarianism for this sort of question because of how little information that you have, and I'd say saving 5 at the cost of 1 is probably better. I understand from perhaps a Kantian perspective, it wouldn't necessarily be the right action. You'd hope that someone else flicked the lever for you, because you'd still have the calculation in your head and would prefer that outcome, but you wouldn't be able to flick the switch yourself.
I mean, you could look at it in this way as well. Imagine you were in the same room as somebody who was about to launch a nuclear missile at some country. Would it be right to kill him to save those people in that country?
Yep. But then that person's not an innocent as well. That adds an extra dimension.
No, I know. But maybe they are. Like, what if they're suffering from a brain tumor?
Yeah.
Then they're not morally responsible, but they are going to kill all these people, and it's sort of a runaway trolley because he can't control what he's going to do.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Right, that's the most common response. The philosopher Judith Jarvis Thompson has said that everybody has agreed that it is permissible to turn the trolley, so you line up with the majority here. Okay, so let's see what you think about the second scenario. Note, you'll get the most out of this activity if you treat each scenario as self-contained. In other words, don't aim for an artificial consistency, just respond as you would if you were thinking about each scenario in isolation. Scenario 2, the backpacker. Dr. Georgia Mouse is a truly great surgeon, so great that any of the organs she transplants always take. At the moment, she has 5 patients who need organs, lung, kidneys, and a heart. If they do not get those organs today, they will all die. If the organs are found for them today, Dr. Mouse can transplant the organs and they will all live. The time is almost up when a report comes in that a young backpacker has come into the hospital for a routine checkup. It turns out that he's in excellent health and he has exactly the right blood type to guarantee success of the transplants if she transplants his organs into the patients. All she needs to do is cut him up and distribute the parts among the 5 who need them. Assuming the backpacker doesn't consent to giving up his life to save the 5 people, is it morally permissible for Dr. Mouse to take matters into her own hands and operate anyway? Now, this is the doctor problem, the classic doctor problem.
Yeah. I was going to say it's a reframing of that, isn't it?
And I mean, I lean towards no on this, and I know that they want you to say yes because they're going to make an equivalence between the two. But the reason I say no here is because there is a lot more at stake here. I mean, not only has the doctor made the Hippocratic Oath to do no harm, if it was found out that she ever did that, people would stop trusting the hospital, people wouldn't go in for routine checkups, it would cause a lot more harm further down the line. Now, I reckon they're going to tell us that we're being inconsistent by saying no here, but I've got reasons for not equating the two situations. So what do you guys in general on the trolley, I think everybody Chris says don't turn the trolley, it gives more points. Chris says lean yes, it's not his fault that the brakes book. Martin says, if you're a rail worker, never split up with the minority. Yeah, cool. Okay, so I'm going to assume that everybody's answering the same in this one. No one said anything in the chat yet. So let's go with no. That's my answer anyway. Excellent. Most people agree with you that Dr. Mouse should not harvest the backpacker's organs. However, given that you responded it would be permissible for Pacey Bones to turn his trolley, this does raise the issue of what it makes the backpacker scenario different in moral terms to the trolley scenario. Well, I just said.
Yeah. I think that you're supposed to think about that after.
Oh.
But we've discussed the thing so many times.
Yeah. The good news is that many philosophers would agree with you that there is a significant moral difference between the two scenarios we've seen so far. Philippa Foot, for example, argues that the driver of the trolley will be killing 5 people if he does not turn his trolley, whereas the transport organ will only be letting 5 people die if she does not operate. Foot further argues that because killing is worse than letting die, it is permissible for the trolley driver to turn the trolley, since his choice is between killing 1 person and killing 5 people, whereas it's not permissible for the transplant surgeon to use the backpacker's organ, since her choice is between killing 1 person or letting 5 people die, and killing is morally worse than letting die. I mean, I think our justifications were better. The question here is, do you agree that there is this morally significant difference between the two scenarios? Does reflection on the moral difference between killing and letting die explain the judgment that is morally permissible to turn the trolley but not to kill the backpacker? So, my justification is what I said, not theirs. So...
Yeah. I mean, in the sense that if you turn the track, you're choosing who lives or dies. Because, you know, you're making that choice. Well, this 1 person has to die. So it's all right to kill him because the consequentialist theory. Whereas letting somebody die it's still kind of choosing who was going to die, but they were going to die anyway. So you're just letting events take their course rather than choosing for them to die, if you see what I mean. But of course, our justifications are slightly different for the doctor problem. It's not that she's letting them choose to die, it's she's keeping the integrity of the profession and making it so that people aren't afraid to go to the doctor, aren't afraid to go to the hospital, that kind of thing. Which could, in essence, create more deaths than saving the 5 people.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm unsure how I should answer this, because I don't think that it's... there is a difference. I acknowledge the difference between killing and letting die, but I don't think that that's necessarily a massive difference. And
the difference is that you're altering the course of events.
Yeah.
You're choosing for those events to not play out. In the case of the trolley problem. In the case of the trolley problem, the doctor problem, you're allowing those events to play out. Yeah. So there is a slight difference in the actual kind of thing, yeah.
But it's asking if it's a significant difference. And I don't think it's a significant difference. I think it's something else that makes it a significant difference. So should I be answering no to this, if that's my answer? Or in the spirit of the question, I mean...
I think there is a morally significant difference.
But I mean, how significant? I mean, what do they mean by significant there? Are they saying, like, I think that there is a difference, but it's a little difference, rather than a big difference, you know? But
yeah. Okay, so imagine that there's a mass shooter. And he's about to fire on 5 people, and you kick the gun and it goes and hits another person. Just a single person. Whereas you could say, well, I'm not going to get involved. Just let those 5 people die. Is there a moral significance between you choosing that one person to be shot by this attempted mass murderer, or is the 5 people dying no significant difference? And I would say that there is, because you're actually choosing to alter the course of events so that only one person dies. And it's less people dying, less
Yeah, but then
suffering.
that's going the other way. Those 5 people were going to die if you didn't intervene, but because you've intervened.
Well, that's the same as the trolley problem and the doctor problem. If you don't intervene, those 5 people die. Whereas if you do intervene, 1 person dies and 5 don't. But
Well,
like you said, there is a difference between the moral obligations of the doctor and your moral obligations for changing the track.
yeah. I'm not happy with this. I want to know what happens next so I can choose what I'm going to do. Like, yeah, for me, there's other bits that are more significant than this. So that alter my mind. But I mean, I'll go with yes for now. Okay, we'll return to the issue of moral difference, if any, between killing and letting die in a little while. First, though, we want to see what you think about a variation of the standard trolley problem, the bystander. Events with the trolley and the workman are unfolding exactly as they did in the first scenario, but this time you are strolling by the trolley track. You watch as the driver notices the 5 workmen on the track ahead, and you see him hit the brakes, and then notice his expression of horror as the brakes fail. However, on this occasion, before the driver has a chance to decide whether to turn the trolley, he faints dead away. What to do? You then see there's a switch by the trackside which you can throw, thereby turning the trolley yourself. You will kill 1 person if you do this, but you will save 5 workmen who will be killed if you don't switch. Is it morally permissible for you to throw the switch? Yes. In the same sort of light, sure, you can add additional parameters on it. If you knew who all the people were, you might make a different judgment. But yeah. There's a tension in your response here. You think that killing is worse than letting die, yet you think it would be morally permissible for you, a bystander, to turn the trolley. Then the difficulty is that your choice here is between doing nothing, which means you let 5 people die, and turning the trolley, with the consequence that you kill 1 person. Given that you think killing is worse than letting die, isn't it clear? It isn't clear. It isn't clear why it would be morally permissible for you to turn the trolley. Possibly it's a numbers game for you. Well, yes, that would be part of it. That would be part of it. But then that's what I said, like with the doctor problem, there's more things to take into account than just the killing and letting die. Oh, it's saying my tension's up there now. Look at that. See, I knew I should have answered no, Dave.
I'm sorry for influencing you, but there is a solution to this.
However, the trouble is that if it is just a numbers game, then it isn't at all clear why you claimed earlier that it would not be permissible for the surgeon to harvest the young backpacker's organs. After all, by doing so, she would prevent the deaths of 5 people in a situation that seems, at first sight, at least to be structurally identical to your bystander scenario. There's another possible difference between the trolley scenarios and the surgeon scenario, which has to do with the idea most famously articulated by Immanuel Kant. That is, it is wrong to treat a person solely as a means to an end. The thought here is that it would be wrong for Dr. Mouse, the transplant surgeon, to operate, since her plan depends on treating the backpacker purely as a means to achieve some particular good outcome. In other words, the plan only works if she uses the young man's body to save her patients. However, this is not true in the case of the trolley scenarios, which it makes no difference whether the single workman is on the spur. In other words, turning the trolley will still save 5 people on the track, even if the workman on the spur blinks out of existence just before the trolley is turned. According to some philosophers, this difference is crucial. It is not morally permissible for the transplant surgeon to operate, since that would involve treating the backpacker solely as a means to an end. However, it is morally permissible to turn the trolley in both scenarios, since a good outcome here does not depend on the presence of the single workman on the track. The question is, do you agree that there is this morally significant difference between these scenarios? Is there a moral injunction to the effect that it is wrong to treat a person solely as a means to an end, which adds weight to the judgment that it would be wrong to kill the backpacker for his organs? Yes.
See, value pluralism for the win.
Good. That response certainly explains why you don't think it would be morally permissible for Dr. Mouse to harvest the backpacker's organs. It also fits with your earlier claim that there is a moral difference between killing, which in many instances will involve treating a person as a means to some other end, and letting die. Let's see whether you maintain this consistency in the way you respond in the final scenario. It's the trolley and workman again, but this time the track is set up in a loopback configuration. As before, you're the bystander able to turn the trolley in the switch. So we've got a thing. Trolley. I've seen this one before. Kill them all!
Drift.
As the diagram shows, the spur onto which you have to divert the train if you want to avoid the train running down 5 workmen on the main track loops back onto the main track, which means the train will be sent back down the track towards the 5 workmen, inevitably killing all of them if it is not stopped. However, crucially, the single workman on the spur is a little chunky. He is fat. In fact, he is so chunky that his body by itself stops the trolley, which means the trolley won't loop back round and kill the 5 much thinner workmen on the main track. So the question is it morally permissible to turn the trolley in this situation? Yeah, that one's hard.
It is, isn't it? It adds a whole new dimension to it.
Well, because then you're suddenly using that person as a means to an end.
Yeah, exactly.
Apparently, Wolf took no hits on that first game. Well done.
That's because he didn't play it.
I was just going to say, that is the only way to win the game.
There is no way to win moral games. There's only not taking as much damage by the end.
You're still saving 5 lives. So, from a purely utilitarian point of view, but obviously from a purely utilitarian point of view, you could make the argument that you should do the doctor problem, although there is the additional calculation of additional consequences, which might not be with this thing. I think this one's a bit tough. I don't know. It's a tough one because I still lean towards the saving of those 5 lives in a bit because it's still a very different situation to the doctor. I understand it's gonna put my tension quotient up because of the means to an end, but I'm gonna go with it because I think that's the way I lean. I'm sure you've said no, it's not morally permissible, Dave.
I'm not saying no. So you've answered.
Well, no, I'm sure you have said no, but I'm like I said, there you go. So, okay, although that response is consistent with your previous responses to the trolley scenarios, it does not easily fit with your view that it is morally relevant whether a person is treated solely as a means to an end. In the loopback scenario, turning the trolley saves the 5 workmen on the main track because it hits the chunky workman on the spur. If he blinks out of existence, then the 5 will die. In this sense, the chunky workman is the mechanism by which the 5 workmen on the main track are saved, something which, at the very least, you ought to think is morally suspect because it involves treating the chunky workman as a means to an end, which is what I said it would do, and I knew it would do it.
Yeah,
but again, sorry.
Oh no, it's all right. Finish.
I was going to say, but I still see the difference between the doctor scenario. Like, the options they've given me are not the whole picture, so like I can explain why and the differences. I assume you pressed no, though.
I did. Sorry.
No, that's all right. I knew you would.
There's also another thing, just to throw a spanner in the works here. there's a thing in morality called the doctrine of double effect, which is that it's morally permissible to do something if your intent is something else. So think of something like the problem with dirty hands. It's morally fine to torture somebody to get the information out of them to find a nuclear bomb that's about to go off in the middle of Chicago, because you're not torturing them to get the information. You're saving millions of people.
Yeah.
So it's the emphasis on what you're doing that makes the morally relevant difference. So one classic example of this is you have a bunch of people trapped in a cave. The fat guy rushes out to try and escape because he's selfish, but he gets stuck in the hole. But if you plant dynamite 2 feet next to him, he's going to be killed as a result of you planting the dynamite. But your intention isn't to kill him. Your intention is to help the other 5 people get out and not die.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, so if you buy the doctrine of double effect, you could say, well, you've turned the trolley not to kill the fat man and use him as a means to an end, but you've turned the trolley to save the 5 people.
Which is what you're doing, but you know the only way to save them is to use that person.
Is to use him as a means to an end, yeah. That's why I don't buy the doctrine of double effect, but it's very popular within Catholic morality. Or at least it's a popular argument within Catholic morality.
That's fair. Unfortunately, Sorry, carry on.
Oh, sorry, I was just going to say, like the bombing of Dresden, it's morally impermissible to kill innocents in a war, but it's fine to bomb Dresden because you're not bombing it to kill the civilians. You're bombing it to help the war come to an end sooner and create less casualties.
Yeah. Unfortunately, there's still something else puzzling about your response. It isn't at all clear why you don't think it would be morally permissible for Dr. Mouse to harvest the young backpacker's organs. As you might have noticed, the transplant surgeon scenario and the loopback scenario have very similar structure. No, they don't. In both cases, it is only possible to save the lives of 5 people by making the use of the body of one another person. So why do you think this trade-off is acceptable in the case of the looping back trolley, but not in the case of the transplant organ? I've explained already. There's far more ongoing negative effects that could happen out of the situation with the doctor. Okay, we're nearly done now. We just need to collect anonymously some information about you. I lose. Trolleys aren't my thing.
Yeah, apparently I know my trolleys. I'm sorry. But again,
you are Trolley Dave.
Otherwise, yeah, exactly. I mean, again, though, I could not believe the things that I'm saying and also just be gaming the actual responses to try and win the game.
Yeah.
But, like, I actually hold the things I'm saying, obviously.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, I it's just the thing is, the reasons I have, my justifications for things are not things that are available there. So it's not clear. It's clear to me. I don't think.
Yeah, that's it. Like you said before, there's no nuance in the answers.
Yeah. So whilst I've got attention based on their database, I don't feel like I've got as much tension there as it's putting out. So.
Would any rational ethicist agree that you have attention? That's the question.
I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah, neither do I. Because I don't know anything about these things. I just make it up as I go along.
Right, Icarus, are you still around? Did you want us to do the valid and sound? Are we valid or invalid? Sorry, not valid or sound. Valid or invalid? So, yes, Lone Wolf. Yeah, I'm gonna chuck that one up on the screen. The authors of these questions may be fine philosophers, but they are horrible question writers. Yeah, I think It's one of those things, though, with a question like this. I mean, morality is such a complex and nuanced topic that, you know, you'd need a million different options for someone to pick. You know, all the way through my answers, they didn't fully relate to my position. Like, I mean, the answers did, but like the qualifications of the answers, my justifications. So, very, very, very difficult. The game decided that Claire's doing too well. Well, see, you should have just got on here with us, Claire. We've already gone through 2 games.
Yeah, Claire would have done better than us.
Do the valid thing. We have valid, invalid discussion on Twitter. What? As in, it's going on right now, or it's just one that comes up all the time? So
no, he's referring to the discussion going on about whether the Kalam is valid.
That one again, yeah,
yeah. But he's arguing that most people, it's not valid because outside of the context of logic,
that BT Rex guy or whatever.
That's
it is.
The guy, yeah. Bitrex, something like that.
Something like that. Yeah. Yes, I mean. So obviously there are contextually correct uses for words. And so if you're talking about a logical argument, you sort of use the logical definition for valid and sound. And, you know, if you're talking about a train ticket, it's going to have a different meaning for valid. A valid train ticket. Or a parking ticket, or whatever, permit, should I say. And you have these contextually correct uses for words. You think about how theory and evolution are used within science, you know, versus the colloquial versions. If you're talking about something scientific, you use the scientific version of theory or evolution. Whereas if I'm just having a chat with Dave and going, oh yeah, I've recently had an evolution of my ideas, you know, it's not the same thing as biological evolution within science. And if
can you show me the change of alleles in your decision?
Yeah. And if Dave goes, oh, I've got a theory about why that is, he's not talking about a scientific theory. He's just talking about the colloquial version, which is the idea, you know. And so the kalam is a logical argument. So valid has a very specific, you know, definition. Valid in logic is base. Sorry, got a fly all of a sudden.
I thought you just got to a really good point in the porn that you're watching on the side.
Oh man, I'm far too distracted to be able to handle that. But yeah, I don't even know what I was saying.
You mean masturbate and answer questions at the same
time? I cannot type with one hand.
Neither can I. The laptop's too big.
So, the rules of this test are simple. It's your job to determine whether an argument is valid or not. All the arguments are syllogisms. Syllogisms. Here's a standard example. All humans are mortal. All Greeks are humans. Therefore, all Greeks are mortal. An argument is valid if and only if the conclusion necessarily follows from the premises. Oh, that's what I was going to say. Thus, the argument above is valid before if all humans are mortal and if all Greeks are human, it follows as a matter of logical necessity that all Greeks are mortal. Now, just to interject here, that it doesn't. I mean, that argument we'd obviously say is sound as well. But it doesn't necessarily have to be sound, right? You could have things that are incredibly unrealistic, but the premises still necessitate that conclusion.
All dogs have 3 tails. All dogs have 2 tails. Tails from Sonic has 2 tails, therefore Tails from Sonic is a dog. that would be an example of valid but not sound.
Yeah. So, An argument. Oh, sorry, I've said that bit. It is important to stress that this kind of logical entailment has nothing to do with the truth of the premises or conclusion. It is only about working out whether the conclusion necessarily follows from the premises. This is really all the information you need to take the test. You'll be asked to assess the validity of 15 syllogisms, and this is just a matter of saying whether the conclusion is entailed by the premises. You can do that, surely. Oh, one final thing. You'll be timed. The clock starts when you hit the button below. So less chat about it and more clicking.
Yeah, I've waited to start mine because of the time thing.
Claire, thank you for joining us. We shall see you soon, hopefully. Right, go. Remember, all bigots are prejudiced people. Prejudiced people are racist people. There are. Oh, I should be looking at this screen. I've confused myself.
Okay, is that your first question?
Yeah.
Is that different from the one I got?
Oh, cool. So we're on different things. I should be reading these out. Sorry. Some potatoes are not fruit. Some fruit are not oranges. Therefore, some oranges are not potatoes. What? Some obese people are not unhealthy. Some soccer stars are not unhealthy. Therefore, some soccer stars are not obese. Some. I hate when they throw negatives into syllogisms. They always throw me off. Are not unhealthy, or are healthy. Some obese people are not unhealthy. Some soccer stars are not unhealthy. Hey Crisis, how you doing? Therefore, some soccer stars are not obese people. I don't get how that one there. All dogs are noisy animals. Some hounds are not noisy animals. Therefore, all hounds. No, that's not valid. All dogs are noisy animals. Some hounds are not noisy animals. Therefore, all hounds are dogs. No, that's invalid. It doesn't follow. No brave people are stamp collectors. Some stamp collectors are mountaineers. Therefore, some mountaineers are not brave people. No brave people are stamp collectors. Some stamp collectors are mountaineers. Therefore, some stamps are not brave people. Yeah. I'm reading them out loud. Shush. No humans are mortal. Some humans are women. Therefore, some women are not mortal. It's because it says some women. All Labradors are four-legged. All dogs are Labradors. Therefore, some dogs. Some party accessories are not bouncy castles. Some bouncy castles are things loved by children. Therefore, some things loved by children are party accessories. This is too long for me to hold into my head. Some party accessories are not bouncy castles. Some bouncy castles are things loved by children. Therefore, some things loved by children are party accessories. No, that's invalid. It doesn't make sense. No mud snakes are poisonous. All mud snakes are snakes. Therefore, some snakes are poisonous. That doesn't follow either. That does not logically follow. All cats are stealthy animals. No tigers are stealthy animals. Therefore, no tigers are cats. That does logically follow. It is valid, even though it's not sound. No tall people are blind. All trolley drivers are blind. Therefore, no trolley drivers are tall people. No tall people are blind. No, all trolley drivers are blind. No tall people are blind. All trolley drivers are blind. Therefore, no. Yeah. Okay. That one was just a little bit. Oh shit! Didn't press it. All.
Okay, it's sort of matching up with the ones I've got now.
All posers are annoying. Posers? Does that say posers? Posiers? Posers? Posers? Is that what it's saying?
Posers, yeah.
Someone that's a poser, right? All hipsters are posers, therefore some hipsters are annoying. All posers are annoying. Therefore some hipsters are annoying. No, it should be all hipsters are annoying rather than some hipsters are annoying. Some authors are not literate. Some boxers are literate. Therefore, some boxers are not authors. That's just a confused mess, but I can't work out if that one's valid or not. Some authors are not literate. Some boxers are literate. Therefore, some boxers are not authors. Yeah, okay. Some students are sleep deprived. No narcoleptics are sleep deprived. Therefore, some narcoleptics are not students. And some students are sleep deprived. No narcoleptics there. Some narcoleptics. Yeah. Took me 6 minutes. Yeah, well, I was reading them out loud and I got confused. I'm sorry. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah.
Yeah, I did terribly.
Did you? I can't believe you did terribly.
Sort of the timing, because of the time.
Oh, that's not. I wish I was still that young.
You did better than me in the adjusted.
Hooray! A can of Hopster IPA. Oh, you are such a hipster, kiddo. So catching up with the chat. Crisis says is doing really chill. He played some games of Super Smash Bros. With a friend and we streamed some really cool moves. Then I showed my Monster Mash Bash 2021 remix to musicians and people really, it's not showing it, liked it. It was really cool. That's awesome. So, yeah. So, Monster Mash Bash 2021 remix. I might have to check that out myself, Crisis. Yeah, okay. So, thank you for completing valid or invalid. On your right, you'll see a chart detailing your time-adjusted score and your unadjusted score, also the average score for both. You identified whether a syllogism was valid or invalid 10 out of 15 occasions. You took 6 minutes and 6. That represents an adjusted score of 9. Additionally, you might be interested to know that you correctly identified 3 of 4 valid syllogisms being valid and 7 of 11 being invalid.
Yeah, see, I got 3 out of 3 as being valid and 9 out of 12 as being invalid.
So we did have different questions.
Yeah, very different questions.
Yeah. That's interesting in itself. Fair. So, yeah. Some of them were definitely confusing the way they were worded. Like, I thought,
and especially having to rush through them and talk and pay attention to the chat and pay attention to what each other is saying. Yeah.
But yeah, cool. That was harder than I thought it was going to be. I thought it was
kind of fun. I bet Philip would have got them all right.
Yeah, of course he would have. No question. No question at all. Where do we get back to the beginning? So, yeah, we've been good. Thank you very much. We've just been playing some philosophy games, doing some philosophy experiments, having a bit of a laugh, and just generally chilling and getting frustrated that like when we did the moral one, It wasn't nuanced enough. There wasn't way for me to fill in my justifications for certain things. So yeah, I did a lot worse than I think of myself. It could show that I have too much of a high opinion of myself when it comes to moral tensions, or it could just be that they needed a bit more nuance to it all. I think
it would be interesting to see how Philippa Foot would have done on it.
Yes. Is there anything else, any other ones that you jump out to you right away?
Hang on. There's one elementary, my dear Watson. There's the Newcomb paradox, which is about the box. Do you open the box? You've got $1,000 and $1 million in one box. If the AI predicts which boxes you'll open, one will be empty or one will have $1 million. Would you eat your cat? Well, I don't have a cat, but I'd eat somebody else's cat. Especially if it was good in a curry. There's one on the Euthyphro dilemma. Whose body is it anyway? Which I would guess is an example of Judith Jarvis Thompson's Violinist. A murder puzzle in the face of death. You're being tortured in the morning. Framing the epidemic. That might be an interesting one and sort of relevant. Bart and Lisa go head to head. What does Mary do? Which I would guess is some kind of play on the
Mary's room?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Well, you're flashing, Dave. Yeah, there's a few good ones. Potentially, I don't know. Haven't done them.
Exactly. The names sound interesting anyway. Peter Singer and the Drowning Child, which is sort of about giving to charity.
Yeah.
I would imagine it's a play on his thing where he was talking about the Bangladeshi. Yeah.
Okay, let's do one. Let's just go elementary, my dear Watson.
I'm guessing that's another logic one. Oh, it's the voice and selection test.
Do you want to do that one then, or do you want to go back and do a different one?
Remember when I did the thing about rationality, the stream about rationality, and I gave the little presentation, and I said about the cards where you have to choose which one falsifies.
Oh yes, and the better way. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, let's not do that one. That one would be fun to do, but yeah. And I remember on that one, you sort of your instinct is to go for X when actually, if you sit back and think about it, Y is the actual correct answer. And
yeah.
Okay. Murder puzzle.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah.
The Bart and Lisa one sounds kind of good as well. It sounds kind of based on The Simpsons. But let's go for the murder puzzle first, because I like my murder mysteries.
Come back to Bart and Lisa in just a sec. The murder puzzle. Right, ladies and gentlemen, through much deliberation, we are going to be doing the murder puzzle. Actually, Crisis, if you want to join in, where's the link? Can you paste the link for me, Dave, to the site? I can't scroll up enough. And let's do the murder puzzle. It's common with a number of activities on site. Murder play is based on the work of our favourite philosopher, Judith Jarvis Thompson. Probably you'll be pleased to hear that this time it doesn't involve trolleys. However, it does involve a surgeon and a murder, so that's exciting. And it won't take very long. So click the button below to get started. Did you? Nice one. Cheers, Dave. So, Crisis, that's a link to the philosophy experiments that we're doing. We're going to be doing the murder puzzle. Everyone else in the chat is joining along and playing these games with us. I've been doing poorly so far. So, don't feel ashamed.
So have I, and look.
Yeah, he's got a couple of degrees behind him. Okay, so we're going to start by asking you to make a judgment about what makes an act morally permissible or not. Does an assessment of whether some act is morally worse than another act settle the question of what it is morally permissible for an agent to do? So, for example, given a choice between only two acts, X and Y, where X is morally worse than Y, does the fact that X is morally worse than Y settle the question of what it is permissible to do? I.e., so in this instance, it would be permissible to do Y, the less worse act. Important. You don't need to worry that if you respond yes, you're going to get caught out because of some trickery to do with bad consequences. In other words, if you respond yes, you're not going to get into difficulties because of the thoughts about the situations where inflicting more rather than less pain, for example, avoids some horrible outcome, because one can quite consistently argue that in such a situation, inflicting less pain would be the morally worse action and therefore to be avoided, precisely because it would have horrible consequences. Okay, well, this seems like a perfectly sensible response. If you're confronted by a situation where you will be inevitably cause pain, but you can choose whether it's a small amount or a large amount, then it does seem that as if the fact it is morally worse to inflict large amounts of pain as opposed to a small amount, assuming it is a fact, settles what it is morally permissible to do, namely only inflict a small amount of pain. Is killing 5 innocent people morally worse than killing 1 innocent person? No, assume that all other things are equal here. So, for example, it's not going to turn out by killing the 5 people, you're going to save the universe, or, yeah, because people get silly with those questions. So yes, killing 5 innocent people is worse than killing 1 innocent person, unless you're really hungry. Right, that certainly seems as if it must be the right response. All other things being equal, killing 5 innocent people is surely morally worse than killing 1 innocent person. Excellent. To note, you're not in favour of indiscriminate killing. Now, let's see how you get along with our first moral scenario. While badly overworked, a hospital surgeon becomes careless and made a terrible mistake. Rather than dispensing the correct medication to his patients, he inadvertently gave 5 of them a deadly slow-acting chemical. This chemical works very differently in different people, which means the surgeon has ended up in a situation where he needs 5 separate organs to save their lives. 2 lungs, 2 kidneys, and a heart. Without these organs, his 5 patients will definitely die, or to put it another way, it will turn out that he killed them by administering the chemical. As it happens, a young backpacker has come into the hospital, for a routine checkup.
Sounds familiar, yeah.
Which is a sort of thing that happens a lot in a hospital. It turns out that the backpacker is in excellent health and has exactly the right blood type to guarantee success if the surgeon transplants the organs into the 5 patients. All he needs to do is cut him up and distribute the parts among the 5 people who need them, assuming A, that the backpacker doesn't consent to give up his life to save other people, and B, that the lives of the 5 people will be saved if and only if the organs are transplanted, and C, nobody will ever find out what the surgeon has done. Is it morally permissible for the surgeon to take matters into his own hands and operate? No. Do I need to explain why? I mean, here they're saying no one will ever find out, so one of the things that I mentioned was the ongoing consequences, but he's still taken the oath to do no harm, and there's still the issue of consent. So, and if anyone's organs should be given up, the doctor should give up his own organs because he's the one that fucked up.
Yeah. It's sort of the retributive justice.
Yeah. Good. You'll be pleased to hear that Judith Jarvis Thompson, who developed this scenario, agrees with you that it would not be permissible to kill the backpacker in this situation. Let's see if you take the same view about the situation outlined in the final scenario below. It is the same situation as in the previous scenario, except with one crucial difference. This time, the surgeon has deliberately poisoned his patients. He was badly overworked, had known he was named beneficiary in his 5 patients' wills, and it came over him one day to give them the chemical to kill them. Now, he repents and would save them if he could. If he does not save them, he will positively have murdered them. Do these facts make it permissible for the surgeon to cut the backpacker up and distribute the parts to the 5 who need them? And again, it should be assumed the backpacker doesn't consent to save the life of the people, and the lives of the 5 people will be saved, and only if the organs are transplanted, and that nobody ever will find. Why does that make it any better? I don't understand. Why does that make it any better? It doesn't. Right, that's it for the questions. That was really quick.
Yeah, I was kind of shocked by that one. It was like 3 questions and done.
Yeah. You failed.
Oops.
How did I fail? This activity is designed to explore our intuitions about particular class of killings, namely those with letting die and so on. It seems then the proposition of killing more people is morally worse than right. Okay, so what it's saying is because he's chosen to kill 5 people, but then he's already done it though. He's already done the act, but it's slow acting, so he can then save them by killing one other person. So I understand why they're saying that tension is there. I still think there's a bit of a difference, though, wouldn't you?
Yeah. I got no tensions in mine, and I passed.
How?
Because I gave slightly different responses.
What did you answer, though? I'm interested.
I can't remember. I might be slightly drunk. I figure we're just answering questions, so if I get drunk, it's not too bad. I don't have to be on the ball.
Right. Should we do one more and then end it for the night? Do the Bart and Lisa go head to head?
Yeah, sounds good. Unless somebody in the chat has one.
Yeah, I mean, if anyone out there wants to suggest one that we can all do, then feel free. If not, we'll get on with going Bart and Lisa go to head to head. Why is there no atheism under the religion tab? There's just none.
It's proof that atheism isn't a religion. You can't get much better proof than a philosophy quiz online.
So what's interesting is my chat seems to have frozen. I only saw that because I just briefly looked at the thingy. The last thing I can see in my chat is you posting that message, Dave.
Ah, the one about chemo? The one for chemo?
No, philosophy experiments.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Oh no, that was a while ago. Yeah.
Yeah, I've seemed to have lost my connection to the chat, and in fact, it seems to have been disconnected over here as well. Hang on, let me refresh this and see if this works. Oh, I've lost all the previous. Yeah, it says I've lost connection to YouTube from Restream for some reason. Don't know why.
Okay, that's weird. Yeah,
that's weird. Hopefully the stream's still connected. Yeah, the stream's still connected, I think. But okay, well, I'll have to try and keep an eye on the chat by looking at the actual stream as it's coming in. I won't be able to respond to any chat messages because for some reason that's not working. The connection has expired. I need to reconnect from your Restream dashboard. Really? Apparently Restream has been disconnecting him, Lone Wolf, as well. So the chat on screen seems to be going along though. Yes, it is, Cyborg. So I don't know what exactly is going on with everything, but apparently Restream has disconnected YouTube, even though I'm streaming to YouTube and it's streaming to YouTube, and I don't know why it would cut me off midstream. But it just means I've had to load a separate chat window, and it means I'm not going to be able to do the overlay. But that's not a problem. So anyway, so the last one for tonight, unless anyone has a request. Did anyone get any requests in?
Not that I can see.
Okay.
This one seems to be different than a typical philosophy one. It looks more like probability or game theory or something.
Do you want to do a different one then, or do you want to do this?
Might be worth doing a different one. That might be more interesting.
Okay. Let's have a look. Whose body is it anyway? Think that's going to do something with like identity?
Yeah, I think that's another Judith Jarvis Thompson one, the violinist, I would imagine, but might be fun to do.
Did you want to do a different one? The epidemic one, maybe?
That one seems kind of topical, doesn't it?
Yeah?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
It's probably about forced vaccinations, I would imagine. Something like that.
We shall soon see. Cool. Okay, so last game of the night. Framing the epidemic. An introduction. This is a quick test of your decision-making processes. There are a couple of things to note before you start. The first is that there are no right answers here. You will not be assessed on the merit of your particular decisions you take, so you should respond in the way that you favor, not the way that you think the program will be best rewarded. The second point is related. This activity works best if you treat each decision as a self-contained entity. In other words, you'll get the most out of this exercise if you don't try and second-guess what's going on. It's perhaps also worth pointing out that there is absolutely nothing tricky or misleading about follows. The two scenarios you'll be asked to judge should be taken at face value. The final thing to mention is the two scenarios featured here were first developed by psychologist Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky in their 1984 study titled Choices, Values, and Frames, which was published in the journal American Psychologist.
Yeah, you recognize those names from the stream I did on rationality, and Daniel Kahneman is the guy that wrote Thinking Fast and Slow.
Yeah, I've got the book in the car. I haven't read it yet. But I've got it. You're the leader of a country that is facing the outbreak of an epidemic that will kill exactly 600 people if you do not do something about it. Your top medical people have prepared two alternative programs to combat the disease and have estimated the likely consequences of adopting each program. You can be confident that these estimates are accurate. There is no trickery here. Program A, 400 people will die. Program B, there is 1/3 probability that nobody will die and 2/3 probability that 600 people will die. So are we supposed to calculate the difference and actually sort of go 2/3 of 600?
It's a probability choice between saving the most amount of people. So if you want to save the most amount of people, which program should you go for?
So it's a guaranteed 400 people will die. Yeah, what I'm saying is though that is it saying that actually the numbers in between. So for program B, Is the number actually in between the two?
What do you mean? Sorry.
So when you're looking at this, it says there's a 1/3 probability that nobody will die, and there's a 2/3 probability that 600 people will die. But is it actually a case of calculating the probabilities and coming up with a net probability of how many people will die overall?
It's more just if you want to save the most amount of people, and you want to make the right choices to saving the most amount of people, which one would you go for?
Okay, no,
like
Icarus is saying,
guaranteed the most amount of
so
people.
he's saying no, it's exactly 0 or 600. So yeah, that's what I'm asking. Is it a case of, is it that? So I think what Icarus is saying is, it's. Are you saying that it's basically, you know, it will be 0 or 600 as Icarus has just said?
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Or is it actually you're supposed to calculate the probabilities and it's somewhere between the two? But then if it is as it's 0 or 600, it seems like there's a higher risk that everyone will die. So program A is the safer option.
Yeah, basically.
Box, it's over there.
Too many monitors.
Not enough monitors. I need I've only got 3.
This isn't Johnny Mnemonic.
Okay, it's an identical scenario. You're the leader of a country, and an epidemic that's going to kill exactly 600 people is coming, and you've got to do something about it. There's 2 medical programs available to you, and these are as follows. Program A, 200 people will be saved. And program B, there's a 1/3 probability that 600 people will be saved, and a 2/3 probability that no people will be saved. You can be confident these are accurate. There's no trickery here. Again, it seems the same thing.
It is, but with greater numbers.
Yeah. So again, I go program A.
Good choice.
My decisions were consistent. You were asked to make 2 decisions about how you would deal with the epidemic. Each decision involved a choice between 2 possible programs for handling the epidemic. The decisions you were asked to make were as follows. You chose A for decision 1 and A for decision 2. These choices are consistent with each other. We need to read all that.
Basically, you rather than taking the gamble, you went for the
safer option.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of the things that I was just wondering in the first bit. It was like I was unsure if what we were saying was a gamble of either or actually because of the probability numbers, it was going to be somewhere in between those numbers. I was thinking of it too much like a math problem, I guess, rather than
most amount of people saved. Yeah.
But yeah, cool. Awesome. Well, they were fun. And actually, I think that we should have a stream in the future, Dave, about doing some philosophy in games as well. I think there's a lot of games that actually have some great philosophy in them. Some of them from sort of like a theological perspective, and some of it, you know, a lot of moral questions. There's a lot of moral questions in a lot of games. A lot of things around personhood and everything like that. So I think we should definitely have a chat about that about some point in the future. Hey Per, good to have you here. Oh, and come on, Cyborg, I didn't see you coming as well.
When I get paid next, I want to pick up the Stanley Parable. Stanley Paradox?
Stanley Parable. The new one? Or the
I'm
original?
not sure. Dave mentioned it, and it sounded pretty interesting in the fact that Severance is kind of based on it, and it has a lot of similarities to Severance, so it sounds like it might be kind of interesting.
I mean, I could always just let you log into my Steam account. You can play the original if you like.
No, it's right, because I want to replay it over and over again. So
yeah, you can do that Steam friend game sharing.
oh no, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I'll take that one offline with you and have a chat. But yeah, you log into my account, authorize your computer, and then you can just share my library. So whenever I'm not on playing my games, you can use any of them.
Okay, that's kind of cool. That's weird for Steam, considering how money hungry those bastards are.
yeah, it's friends and family sharing. I think they still do it. I haven't logged into Steam for ages, really, other than just downloading one game the other day to play on VR stuff. But I mean, I haven't played games in ages. And these days, when I finally get just a few minutes to play a game, I sit there and go, too tired for this shit.
I can definitely relate to that. I got a Command and Conquer remastered in the last Humble Bundle.
Oh yeah,
and it's like some of my favorite games, the old Command and Conquer. But I just, whenever I've got 5 minutes, I just have a nap.
Yeah, I don't blame you. Yes, honestly, Atheist, Mass Effect, Dragon Age, Witcher, they all have some amazing philosophy in them. So they'd be really fun to have a chat about. Maybe a big group of people on as well to chat about the favourite games. I'd like to do some more things where we get more of our audience on the stream with us. It might mean that we have to stream a little bit later one day or do it at the weekend. Kimmo's still recovering from a Yahtzee injury. Awesome. But yeah, I mean, I'd love to get as many people on to discuss their favorite games and the philosophy they like in their games, and if we end up going right, there's a lot in this one particular game, maybe we'll then go right. We'll put a pin in your game and we'll actually do an entire episode dedicated to it. I think certain things, like some of the RPGs, you'd have to do that anyway. So yes, I would love you to be on the panel, Crisis. More than happy. So yeah, I don't know when we're gonna have that one. I probably need a little bit of time to have a think about some of the better games as well. So remind me I've said it as well, because I probably won't remember tomorrow.
I was thinking as well, something that might be interesting for a future stream is to pose one of the questions in some of my assignments. Oh, yeah. And then discuss the answers, how you would answer it and stuff like that.
Yeah. Are we talking about your current degree or your philosophy degree?
Undergrad. My philosophy undergrad, yeah.
Yeah, I'd go with that. Random real-world news. A cow was arrested for murder of a 12-year-old. Really, Icarus? I mean, I know you're generally a bit of a troll, so I don't know if you're being honest, but... but yeah, that's crazy. Has it come up? Is it real, Dave?
I don't know. I've not looked.
You shouldn't be calling women cows. Well played. Guys, don't forget, on Monday is Luke's fortnightly psych stream. He was asking for some ideas about what he should do, and we've had a couple of suggestions, and I think he'll be going with the bystander effect on Monday, but he hasn't booked it in yet, so anything's fit to change. Cow arrested for killing 12-year-old boy in South Sudan. Amazing. So yeah, make sure you check that out. We haven't actually planned our streams for next Tuesday or Thursday, but I should be back to mixing before the streams. I was busy today. As long as nothing comes up over the coming weeks, I should be back to doing my pre-stream mixes. But yeah, awesome. I'm looking forward to getting back involved with doing more mixing and stuff, and getting more of a feel for it. I know my mixing's still a bit shoddy at the moment, and I do apologise and thank everybody who puts up with it before the stream. And I understand it's not for everybody, and that's why I cut it out from the final product. I still don't know if I should do it as a separate stream, like 2 separate streams, like disconnect and then reconnect to the next stream or not. But yeah. Unrelated, I may or may not have a bone to pick about that whole null hypothesis thread, or maybe not. I should finish reading it. Well, if you do, give me a shout, honestly, Atheist. If you actually click on the link and read it in the article, it's probably easier to read than a Twitter thread. It's the what do I mean that you're somewhat of a troll? I mean that you come on here and you make me laugh whilst I'm trying to be serious.
He's a professional. He's not somewhat of a troll. He's a professional.
I mean it in a positive way as well. You don't use your trolling for evil, Icarus. You use it to make me laugh, which is kind of evil when I'm trying to concentrate, but it works. That's a me problem. Yes, it is. You troll. But in relation to the honestly Atheist saying about the null hypothesis, I mean, this is an article that actually has gone down quite well. I think on Twitter it's got probably more likes and shares than most of my other articles. Still hasn't got the most views out of any article. The biggest views of any article in one day was the one that I did on why do Christians and Muslims reject evolution, or something like that. And that is because it was a clickbaity title, and there were too many people getting angry over that one. And that was the days when I used to post all of my articles into like every debate group on Facebook as well, whereas I only post it into like 2 or 3 now. Yeah, I mean, you may have some issues with what I say about the null hypothesis and knowledge and things like that. But the way I've described the null hypothesis is how it's used in science, and people who are saying that they are using how it's used in science and not using it how it's used in science. And I do say, if you language is one of those things that does change over time, and people can have a colloquial version of hypothesis and null hypothesis if they so wish, but they're not using it as the standard terms, and they shouldn't be saying they're using the null hypothesis and they're being scientific and all that sort of thing, using scientific language when that's not what they're actually doing. But I'd suggest reading the whole thing, and yeah, I'm happy to discuss it with you. You can come on and have a chat with us if you like. But I was quite careful with that article as well, and I got Dave and Luke and Steen to have a look at both of the articles I put on about hypothesis and null hypothesis recently.
I mean, there's one thing you could say is, the whole Wittgensteinian language games thing, where words get their meaning from usage and they appear in whatever particular game you're using them in. So atheists are using them in this kind of particular realm where null hypothesis just means X.
It means I don't believe you. That's basically
what it's it's identical to saying this. But the problem is that they kind of blend those language games in that they're saying, well, not only do we use it in this context, but science uses it in this context. And that's where the problem comes in when people claim it. Yeah.
If they were, aware, or if they are aware, honest about the fact that they're using a colloquialism, there isn't as much of a problem. Because that's fine, I'm using it to mean this thing. That's not how it's typically used in science, but that's how I'm using it. That's what I mean. But I mean, I even watched a video by someone who was describing the null hypothesis, and they went, in science there's this thing called the null hypothesis, and it means this thing, and it basically described the whole thing as, I don't believe you, I don't accept your claim. And it's like, well, that's not how it's used in in science. And you had tons of people commenting on it and goes, oh, that's such a great explanation of the null hypothesis. I really understand what it means now. I wasn't sure before. So
Well, why were you even using the term before? Yeah. And I think, sorry.
No, go for it.
I was just going to say this is an example of atheist myth making, where it's using scientific terms to make it seem like atheists are very rational and very scientific, and they base all this stuff on sort of evidentialism and the way science works, and then it turns out that they actually don't.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, read it. Let me know what you think. I'd love it if someone like Matt actually read it and turned went, oh shit, right, yeah. I don't think that would ever happen.
Even if he did read it, he would just say you were wrong because he's Matt and he's smart.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's got to be true because he says it, and because he knows all about atheism, because, you know, he runs the ACA.
Yeah. Oh, he says, I'm particularly interested in the knowledge bit, but I had to get back to work before you got to that bit. Yeah, knowledge bit's interesting. Oh, randomly, Restream's just reconnected the chat. Okay, I'm not even. Anyway, where was I? Particularly interested in the knowledge bit, but I had to go back to work before that. Yeah, so the knowledge bit describes different types of knowledge and how they're done. But I'll let you read that bit because, you know, it's one of those things that I think is easier to sit back and reflect on anyway, rather than, you know. And there are... Sorry.
So I was just going to say that's actually a good point, that you have to sit and reflect on it. I think a lot of people might go into it with the intention of saying you're wrong, so they won't actually reflect on it, and that will harm the actual content of what you're saying. Yeah. So you have to go into it with an actual open mind.
Yeah. And you know what? You might still find certain things in wrong. You might still find some things in there that you disagree with, and that's fine. But I think with everything that you're going into, you shouldn't go in with the attitude of, as Dave said, trying to prove someone wrong or saying someone's wrong. Go in there to go, what's this about then? You know.
Unless you're me and you're smarter than everyone.
Mad cow disease is back. Oh no. I ate a burger tonight as well.
I had chicken, so there. But I'm having chili tomorrow with beef, so.
Lone Wolf says, just FYI, in case no one mentioned, Stanley Parable Deluxe Edition has about 2 hours of new content that really continues the madness in a great way. So it's not massively long, but then the actual game isn't massively long either. I don't want to spoil it for you if you've never played it. But it was one of those games that I love playing it. I don't know how many hours I logged in it, probably only like 3 or 4 of just going around, but it's one of those things that there's different paths and things like that to try out, and yeah, interesting though.
See, I always thought the Stanley Parable was the version of Portal before it was Portal.
I think so.
Yeah, no, that must be another game. It's the something paradox, I think, the Portal before it was Portal, and I just assumed that was the same game, yeah. But this one sounds really interesting from what Dave told me.
Icarus says, did Matt D already ban you? Ban me from what? He might have muted me on Twitter, I don't know. Occasionally, I've been in a thread with him and we've had a conversation. And I don't think I've ever done anything, like got into a heated conversation with him. But I have noticed that generally when I'm conversing in a thread that he's in, he ignores anything I say nowadays. He used to converse with me and now he doesn't. I don't know if he's decided to mute me, but he hasn't blocked me, and I don't know where he would ban me from.
Yeah, he's never conversed with me. Same with Aaron Ra. They've never actually conversed with me, but neither of them have actually blocked me either.
Yeah. I mean, I have conversed with Aaron Ra, and he blocked me because I was in that video that you were on and Chesh was on. But yeah, the three of us were on this video on Chesh's stream, and someone posted a link to him to it, and then I got blocked just because I was on that stream. He didn't even watch it. Like,
yeah. See, I feel left out. He blocked you and Chesh, but he didn't block me. I'm just so insignificant, you know.
Maybe he just assumed that everyone from Answers and Reason just used the one account, and that's why.
Have you ever seen me and you in the same room at the same time?
I mean, we could count it, right?
AI, deep fake.
Well, that's why there's all this wobbling stuff that goes on around me. I don't really exist.
I'm just a green screen. Modeled to your movements, pre-recorded or something. I don't know.
Awesome. Okay, well, I think we'll end things here for the night. So, as I said, make sure you check out what's his face, Luke, on Monday. Show up and support him. It'd be good for him. I'm not going to be able to join in the live stream, but I'll hopefully be in the chat once I've got the girls to sleep. Although they're being, well, one of them is being really, really going through another sleep regression at the moment. Finally got her into a good routine, and now it's like tonight I was like, right, I had to give her to the wife because it was 8:30 and she still wasn't asleep. It's like, how many hours can we be in this bedroom trying to get you to sleep? Yeah. So, honestly, Atheist, yeah, all right, just before we end, I'll answer this. It seems to me that by I'm not convinced they mean I fail to reject the null hypothesis, in which case, if H1 is understood to be God exists, H0 would be not a God exists, which is the Atheist. No.
Well, I mean, you could take it in terms of logic here, where not a God exists is the negation of the claim a God exists. So when you say not a God exists, you're actually saying that the proposition a God exists is not the case. And therefore you're saying God does not exist, rather than just saying, well, I don't believe that claim.
Yeah, but I mean, the way it would work out is, I mean, these, if you read the article,
even then it wouldn't be the null. Yeah.
No. So I mean, these aren't valid hypotheses. But even if you could falsify and operationalize theism and atheism, understood in the propositional sense of God exists and God does not exist, they would be your H1 and H2. And the null hypothesis represents where there's no significant no significant statistical difference between the variables. So it would basically, the null hypothesis would be there's no significant difference between God existing and God not existing. That might then lead you to conclude that either God does not exist or you should suspend judgment in it. But your conclusion based on the null hypothesis not being rejected is not the same thing. And that's what I say in the article. So
if I can put it into something sort of recognizable, the divine hiddenness argument would be sort of like that. The hypothesis that if God exists, then he wants a relationship with us all, and he wants a relationship with non-resistant non-believers. There exist non-resistant non-believers who don't have a relationship with God, so therefore the original hypothesis is falsified. Just to put it in a quick, drunken kind of way.
But this is one of the problems is, and as Wolf says, people need to stop saying null hypothesis and meaning default position, and as Dave has followed up, and people need to stop saying default position when it comes to propositional attitudes, because it's true that, I mean, the default position is not having heard of a proposition. As soon as you've heard of it, there is no default to take, because some propositions might be really easily mundane claims and really easy to believe. So the default for that one, like if I said my name is Joe, right? That is something that's quite easy to believe. Maybe the default position on that is belief, right? If I then said I can do a kickflip, I mean, maybe that's a little bit more uncertain, but it's not so uncommon, right? That people can do kickflips. So maybe you would believe me, but not necessarily be quite so confident as my name is Joe. Then I say come up with a more complicated trick. I don't know, like I could do a backflip or a double backflip, and all of a sudden these things would become less and less likely. So you could say the default for each proposition changes depending on what it is. But even then, I wouldn't take the note and saying default position. As Dave says, you've got to stop saying that when it comes to propositional attitudes.
A position on something is an actual choice, or, well, if you go with doxastic involuntarism, you don't have a position on the default position is to not have a position on something because you haven't actually heard the claim.
Exactly. You're innocent of the proposition.
Yeah, exactly. The default position in skepticism would be to not accept the claim. But the default position in a religious family would be to accept the claim.
Yep. Of those particular things.
Because it's what you've been taught. It's what you've been taught is true. So the default position is to accept it as true because the arguments make sense to you.
Honestly, Atheist says, I don't think all experiments are multivariate and necessarily have an H1 and H2 in a single variable experiments. The data is compared and controlled, and the null is just failure to accept H1. But the H1 will still have to be falsifiable and operationalized.
God exists and God does not exist are just claims rather than hypothesis.
Yeah. So there is no H at all. So if there's no H, there's no H0. H0 exists with its link to H1 to N, even if there is only H1. But, and it's the variables that are within the H's. So there could be multiple variables within a single H. And you'd still have the null being there's no significant difference between this thing, But generally, I think you will have multivariant things, H1 and H2, for example. If you're doing an experiment, let's say a case study where you're testing a medicine, you'll have your control group are on placebos, and you'd have your ones that are having medicine, and you'd have there's no significant difference between the control group and the ones that are taking the actual medicine, and that's your null, and that basically shows that medicine doesn't work. But it doesn't mean that there is no medicine that won't work. It means that H1 has been falsified. It means that you never accept the null hypothesis. It's only in a state of rejected and non-rejected, and it's not until you accept a H1 to N that it's rejected. So that is how that relationship works.
Yeah, I generally read these kind of stuff out to Emma, and she laughs at many of the atheists claiming to be really scientifically minded. She used to do chemistry.
Oh, did she?
Yeah.
So she knows her shit then.
Yeah, she's way smarter than I am.
You should get her on the streams.
Not saying much, But yeah, no, she's way too nervous for that.
Yeah, that's fair. Tell her her Heli Beb Kanofni Namgal Sipsy Clark.
I'm sorry, I don't speak gibberish.
It's the first 20 elements, I think.
Right, okay, yeah.
Icarus says, people argue that atheism is non-belief and quote the dictionary, atheism equals disbelief in God, and they argue disbelief is just non-belief, and then they hit the dislike button on a YouTube video. Yeah, I mean, disbelief, especially when you're talking, within propositional attitudes, disbelief and non-belief are two different things. Disbelief is the belief that it is false, basically. Whereas non-belief is usually that sort of suspensive judgment position where you don't believe the proposition true or false. But even non-belief is a second order belief because you believe that you don't believe it true or false. So but honestly, Atheist, yeah, I'll love to have a chat with you about it in more detail. As Lone Wolf says, you can't have a null hypothesis for non-falsifiable claims. But theoretically, theists do believe their claims are falsifiable, right? I mean, part of this is trying to give charity to their position and have a productive exchange. Depends on the theist. I think a lot of them will say that you can't prove God doesn't exist, so they don't believe it's falsifiable. But it depends on the theist, it depends on the claim. I think that some gods are falsifiable, like specific claims of gods. Well, at least the claim within the god. If you understand from a logical perspective and a logical argument, it's not necessarily operationalized in the same way that you would with a scientific theory. Sorry, a scientific hypothesis. So you can't necessarily operationalize it in that same way. So it probably wouldn't count as a scientific hypothesis all the same. But there are some gods that I think that you can say, based on these characteristics, they're contradictory, therefore it's logically impossible for this god to exist as claimed. So this particular claim of a god is clearly false. But theism in general, no. And Lone Wolf confirms, says, when I was a theist, I didn't believe the omni-god of Christianity was falsifiable. I was taught that God couldn't be tested, and the nature of God transcended science. He's Chad, I guess. You can't disbelieve me if I hold to an unfalsifiable claim. Yeah, basically. Anyway, thank you, everybody. I really enjoyed tonight. Had fun playing the games, fun with the interaction as well. And hopefully we can get back to doing some more of this stuff again, because I really enjoy these sorts of streams. It's always a good laugh.
Yeah, it's just something fun to do, isn't it? And you don't really have to prepare for it. You just go with the flow.
Yeah, exactly. And I like being unprepared.
Story of my life.
Awesome. Well, thank you everybody once again for checking us out. And I just want to say, make sure you check out that Severance stream, seeing as we've been talking about the Stanley Parable. It's definitely worth you checking out. Hope you all have a wonderful night, and I will catch you hopefully Monday at Bearded Heretic stream. Have a good one.